This much improved version of Jaguar's E-PACE gives buyers another very interesting option in the growing segment for premium badged compact SUVs. It's a crucial car for the company, but is it the right one? There's a lot riding on this little crossover.
The E-PACE is the small Jaguar SUV that was supposed to push the brand's sales to a whole new level. Launched in 2017, it certainly opened up a fresh conquest segment for the company, but hasn't been quite as successful as the marketeers had hoped. The 2021 model year, though, brought this heavily revised version. If you're shopping in this sector and maybe previously glanced at an E-PACE but lost interest, it's a car you need to try. The name suggests an electric connection. Misleadingly, as it turns out, Jaguar has another SUV, the battery-powered I-PACE, to provide that. But the E-PACE does now gain a pretty significant degree of electrification in this improved form, thanks to the completely fresh premium transverse architecture platform that now allows it to offer mild hybrid petrol and diesel units, plus the freshly added PHEV plug-in variant we're going to try here. There's also a thoroughly upgraded interior with vastly improved media tech and subtle changes outside to round things off. As before, the E-PACE shares just about all its engineering with its JLR cousin and arguably closest rival, the Range Rover Evoque. But where the latest version of that car was launched to an established bank of loyal customers, the E-PACE has had to carve out a complete fresh niche for itself, which hasn't been easy. Firstly, because the brand has to import it from a production line in Austria, so pricing is inevitably of the premium sort. And secondly, because the fluid handling reviewers and customers expected from a Jaguar was originally hobbled by steel underpinnings so weighty that they made early versions of this car heavier than the brand's bigger F-PACE SUV in the next class up, which then, of course, blighted running costs and efficiency too. The brand claims that the PTA platform and associated engineering of this revised model has made a huge difference to both these issues as part of an update that must do nothing less than transform the sales performance of this, the big cat's cute little cub. Will it? Well, you'll need Car and Driving's review, the industry's most comprehensive, to find out. So, what might the Jaguar of premium compact SUVs be like? Well, the company has established a reputation for engineering cars with a uniquely fluid combination of ride and handling, and this market segment certainly needs that. The established class choices, BMW's X1, Mercedes GLA and Audi's Q3, offer a resolutely unremarkable handling confection. Other contenders have at least tried to be more dynamically distinctive. Some ride quite well but offer little cornering finesse, step forward Volvo's XC40. Others turn sweetly but bump you about over brittle surfaces, the experience offered up by a BMW X2. The stage was set perfectly then at this E-PACE model's original launch back in 2017 for this car to continue in its brand's tradition of being able to offer an almost ideal compromise between these two extremes, and do so with a bit of driver involvement. If you've driven early versions of this model or saw our film on it, you'll know that from launch this little Jaguar struggled to deliver on that brief. One that would have been a lot easier to achieve had this car been engineered from the ground up as a Jaguar, as its larger F-PACE SUV stablemate was. Hard economics, though, decreed that most of what matters beneath this E-PACE model's flowing bodywork, platform, engine, transmission and so on, had to be borrowed from the two most compact models sold by sister brand Land Rover, the Range Rover Evoque and the Discovery Sport. Taking that kind of mechanical package and giving it a Jaguar feel was always going to be difficult, and so it proved. Jaguar's engineers did their best, adding in a more rigid front subframe mounting to crispen up the steering response, giving the most powerful models an active rear axle able to distribute torque between the rear wheels, and offering E-PACE buyers the option of their adaptive dynamics variable damping system. But it wasn't quite enough, especially in terms of ride quality, which in urban conditions, a compact SUV's natural habitat, saw the original E-PACE clatter over bumps and ponder over potholes. It wasn't as engaging as we'd hoped on fast, twisting roads either. According to the brand, this updated E-PACE ought to be different because almost all its engineering is different. Unfortunately, that's not quite true. Yes, there's a fresh range of MHEV engines, but with the exception of the rare plug-in model we're trying here, they're basically the same Ingenium series units as before, with the rather marginal tinselled embellishment of mild hybrid electrification. Yes, too, there's an all-new PTA or Premium Transverse Architecture platform to facilitate these revised powertrains, but it's based around the same clumpy Land Rover-derived steel chassis as before and is just as weighty. Which is not to say improvements haven't been made. On the contrary, even a short drive in this revised E-PACE will reveal an enhancement in low-speed ride quality and steering feel to those familiar with the original version. But all of this is merely enough to bring this car a bit closer to the prevailing undistinguished class standard for ride and handling. From the Jaguar of premium compact SUVs, we'd hoped for more. Those improvements are down to the greater front suspension attachment point stiffness that the new PTA architecture has allowed the engineers to build into the chassis. As a result, the car rides more sweetly over tarmac tears and there's less vibration and harshness in the cabin. Plus, fresh engine mounts have enhanced throttle response and the steering weight feels a touch better judged too, though it's still a fraction more remote than we'd hoped it would be. Through the turns there's body roll, but it's not excessive for a car in this class. A bit of work's been done on highway refinement too, and as a result, this Jaguar is the car in the class we might well now choose first if we had a long highway trip to complete. What about that new range of engines? Well, almost new anyway. The entry-level manual D165 diesel variant gets exactly the same defiantly unelectrified 163 PS 2-litre unit this car had before, mated only to front-wheel drive and manual transmission. A combination nowhere to be found on the mainstream E-PACE variants that Jaguar is keener to sell, which is curious because with close rivals like the Mercedes GLA, the Audi Q3 and the BMW X1, this is the kind of combination a lot of customers still want. For an auto, you'll need an all-wheel drive part electrified E-PACE. In fact, you have to have automatic transmission and all-wheel drive with every other model in the range. The mainstream diesel lineup's propped up by a mild hybrid all-wheel drive version of the D165, but we can't imagine why you'd ever choose it, given that a frankly inconsequential premium gets you the same engine with 204 PS in D200 form. Here, pulling power is boosted from 380 to 430 Newton meters, getting you to 60 miles an hour in 7.3 seconds, 1.3 seconds quicker. In truth, the top D200 diesel unit doesn't feel anything like that fast. The weight issue exacerbated by the 9-speed ZF gearbox's reluctance to shift down as quickly as you might want when a rapid burst of speed is called for. The extent to which you feel this is surprising, given that one of the benefits of the mild hybrid tech is supposed to be the way that it can provide a little electric boost from low revs to torque fill while you're waiting for the turbo to spool up, so helping acceleration from low speeds. With the slightly lighter, mild hybrid petrol models, you notice this sort of thing a little less, but here the gearbox can be rather too eager to change down and fire the revs towards the 6,500 RPM red line, which doesn't really facilitate quiet or luxuriously rapid progress if you've deadlines to meet. Unless you'll merely be using your E-PACE for short hops, we'd probably counsel against the base P200 model, in which 320 Newton meters of torque doesn't really feel quite enough to shift nearly 1.8 tons of Jaguar along, though you wouldn't necessarily know that from this variant's stats. Rest to 60 miles an hour in 8 seconds on the way to 132 miles an hour. For mixed motoring in a conventional petrol version of this car, you'd be better off with either the mid-range P250, which improves those figures to 7 seconds and 142 miles an hour, or the top P300 Sport model, which uses an engine borrowed from the F-Type sports car and is able to enhance these readings further to 6.6 seconds and 150 miles an hour. As we'll observe further in our cost of ownership section, all of these 2-litre mild hybrid petrol units rather like a drink, which, if you're set on fueling from the green pump, might tempt you towards the alternative plug-in E-PACE 300e variant that, as mentioned earlier, we've chosen to try for this test. Here, the engine in question is properly new from the ground up, a 3-cylinder, 1.5-litre petrol unit, putting out 200 PS and boosted with a 109 PS electric motor powered by a 15 kilowatt-hour battery pack. This combination paired with an 8-speed auto gearbox. You might very possibly be put off by this confection's rather ambitious asking price, but if you're not, this is, in our view, a hugely better proposition than the conventional petrol power plants, and it certainly accelerates more quickly than most of its cheaper PHEV segment rivals. The 309 PS total output facilitating a rest to 60 mile an hour time of just 6.1 seconds. Top speed, though, is limited to 134 miles an hour, well down on the ordinary P300 due to the fact that the PHEV package adds on more than a few extra kilograms. Think nearly 2.2 tons, half the weight of an Asian elephant, which is a level of bulk you can't help but feel when cornering at speed. But of course, this variant isn't really about speed, but efficiency, which at the wheel you control via a switch, allowing you to toggle between 3 settings. EV, which is pure electric drive, hybrid, which is engine and battery combining, and save, which uses engine only, preserving battery charge for urban driving you might need to do later in your trip. Up to 34 miles is possible on battery power alone. Across the E-PACE range, the all-wheel drive system in most models, including this PHEV, uses a standard driveline setup that works like most other 4x4 packages in this segment, now that for this revised model it's been engineered to incorporate a driveline disconnect system. This cuts out the prop shaft and rear axle when they're not required, and will leave you at the wheel of a front-driven and theoretically more efficient E-PACE for most of the time. Exclusively for the top P300 Sport petrol performance variant, though, Jaguar fits a GKN-developed active driveline, which uses a clever twin multi-plate clutch to manage torque and wheel spin across the back wheels, maximising traction when cornering at speed. It's basically a more sophisticated version of the torque management by braking system, which is retained for the front wheels on all E-PACEs. As mentioned earlier, every model can also, on request, be fitted with optional adaptive dynamics, adaptive damping, worth considering because it deals with some of the remaining low-speed ride issues we referenced earlier, monitoring body movements 100 times a second and wheel movements 500 times a second, so the car's suspension can always automatically be precisely configured for the road you're on and the mood you're in. On all-wheel drive automatic models, there's also the option of Jaguar's configurable dynamics package, which allows you to add in your own personal settings for throttle mapping, gear shift changes, steering feel, and, if fitted, the adaptive dynamics dampers. This kind of thing makes this Jaguar's claim to be the sports car of its class sound a little more credible. Regardless of whether you choose the adaptive dampers or not, your E-PACE will still come with the selectable driving mode system they operate through, known as Jaguar Drive Control. It's one of those setups that allows you to alter throttle response, steering feel, and on an automatic model like this one, auto gear shift change timings depending on the way you want to drive. Simply make your choice between the various modes provided by this toggle switch near the gear selector. Comfort and eco are fairly self-explanatory, while dynamic sharpens up the car nicely to the accompaniment of a red tinge for the instruments. There's also an extra ADSR, or Adaptive Surface Response mode option, that on automatic four-wheel drive models activates all surface progress control, a low-speed cruise control that helps maintain progress and avoid wheel spin on low traction terrain. Can the E-PACE function off-road? Well, does it matter? As one writer recently pointed out, the sort of people expected to buy this car are the kind of folk likely to think that a trip to the wilds is somewhere more than 15 miles from their nearest Waitrose. So it won't bother these people unduly that this Jaguar lacks the terrain response system that this model's Land Rover designed stablemates use to adapt to off-road surfaces. Nor will it concern them that the off-road angles achievable in this model are some way short of what's possible in, say, an Evoque. For reference, the E-PACE offers an approach angle of 22.8 degrees, a departure angle of 29.4 degrees, and a ramp angle of 21.1 degrees. Despite that, the reasonable 204mm ride height means that you could probably get a surprisingly long way in this car on muddy tracks, provided the right tyres were fitted. A wading depth of up to 500mm, the same as an Evoque, is also possible. The standard Land Rover derived four-wheel drive driveline that most models use is also well up to mildly adventurous excursions, able to send almost all of the engine's power to the rear wheels if those at the front lose traction. Various electronic systems further help things here. Hill Launch Assist stops the car from rolling backwards as you pull away on a steep incline, and automatic models come fitted with the all-surface progress control feature we referenced earlier. Plus, there's a low traction launch option you can select from the PHEV Pro touchscreen that regulates the throttle to restrict wheel spin as you pull away. That'll be particularly useful for towers. All all-wheel drive versions of this car, including this PHEV, can pull up to 1.8 tonnes, though that's 200 kilos down on a comparable Evoque. So yes, this is in most regards a proper SUV. Whether it's also a proper Jaguar will depend on your definition of brand values, but those are changing. Cars like this one are the reason why. Where rival brands merely shrink larger models to create some more compact SUVs, Jaguar opted to create something quite different with the E-PACE. This, according to the Coventry company, has always been the sports car of its class. It certainly has much more of a purposeful look than most of its rivals, especially in this lightly revised form. And that's all thanks to what the designers claim is inspiration borrowed from their F-Type sports car. Now that isn't particularly evident at first glance, but if you know that car and then look a little closer at this one, you'll begin to pick up F-Type cues in the headlights, the muscular rear haunches, and the teardrop graphic of the rear side windows. Which is appropriate because though by and large buyers of compact SUVs aren't especially bothered if their cars don't drive in a particularly sporting manner, they do like them to look sporty, as this one certainly does at the front, where the changes made to this updated model are subtle but significant. The all-new LED headlamps gain a more distinctive double J daytime running light signature, providing you avoid base trim, and they flank a smarter grille with diamond detailing. Further down, there's a revised lower aperture incorporating this more distinctive blade element. Now, most variants now also feature animated directional indicators, and virtually all now feature the brand's R-Dynamic styling package, primarily identifiable here at the front by a less cluttered finish for these huge corner cutouts. Move to the side, and if you happen to be familiar with Jaguar's mid-sized F-PACE SUV, the reduction in size of this E-PACE will be particularly obvious. Jaguar insiders call it the Cub, hence the cute graphics that feature in the puddle lamps and the windscreen surround, and a 320mm length reduction over the mother model. You might notice that the front overhang is slightly longer than that at the rear, the idea being to give the car a sense of visual movement, even when standing still. That's one trademark of Jaguar design. Another lies with this side fender vent just above the front wheel arch, which gains a Jaguar Leaper graphic with this revised model. The fuselage-like profile of the body sides is also supposed to echo that found in some of the brand's more dynamic designs, something the designers have tried to emphasise with these sharp mid-level creases. A further character line lower down gives the flanks some shape, separating arches able to house some of the largest rims in the segment. The E-PACE was the first car in its class to offer the option of 21-inch wheels. We've got 20-inch, 5-split spoke satin grey diamond-turned rims here. Now, roof rails and a black contrast-coloured roof are both options you'll probably want to consider. Approach from the rear and you'll find the taut surfaces and the muscular haunches fusing with the sharp lines of smarter I-PACE inspired LED light clusters that incorporate a race circuit chicane illuminated graphic and also gain animated directional indicators. This large upper tailgate spoiler, meanwhile, is a 3-piece design specially tuned for optimum airflow. It's all very different from this model's F-PACE stablemate, as is what lies beneath. In place of the sophisticated aluminium structure of that larger SUV, the E-PACE still uses steel-based underpinnings, the same as those found in compact Land Rover models like the Range Rover Evoque and the Discovery Sport. JLR makes much of the way that for this revised E-PACE, as with updated versions of the Evoque and the Disco Sport, this chassis has been updated to premium transverse architecture status so that it can accommodate the latest electrified engines. But that hasn't really dealt with this platform's inherent weight problem. As before, to try and compensate, aluminium features in many of the body panels, the roof, the wings, the bonnet and the tailgate. But it's not enough to keep the weight of this little cub in check. It still delivers the rather confusing conundrum of a car that's slightly smaller than, say, a compact Audi Q3 premium SUV, at the same time as being slightly heavier than a mid-sized Audi Q5. A car like this one, no larger than a Focus, should never weigh nearly 1.85 tonnes in base form. For reference, a base spec E-PACE weighs only 35 kilos less than a directly equivalent version of that F-PACE model in the next class up. And this plug-in E-PACE variant tips the scales at over 2.1 tonnes, just 177 kilos less than a plutocratic Range Rover. Let's take a seat up front, where the ambience has been smartened with nicer materials and enhanced screen connectivity for this improved model. If you didn't pick up the visual F-Type sports car references outside, you may more readily notice them once seated in the so-called Sports Command driving position. As in its larger F-PACE crossover, Jaguar has provided the slightly raised seating stance that SUV buyers like, while still allowing you to feel an involved component in the driving experience. Achieving that balance was pretty essential if the F-Type carryovers weren't to look somewhat incongruous. Features like this redesigned, dished 3-spoke wheel, and with the way that the driver's zone arches around you, designated by double stitching that flows across the instrument binnacle and down into the unusual grab handle that frames the left-hand side of the centre stack. Look around, and if you happen to be familiar with the original version of this model, you'll find that much here has been enhanced. Take, for instance, the gear lever with its smart cricket ball stitching, restyled for a nicer look, touch and feel, like the drive mode selector next to it. And there's a classier, shiny black finish for the round ventilation dials just above, which gain the established 1935 Jaguar Coventry designation. You'll also find tabbed on the leather upholstery. More of the driver touch points are now wrapped in soft touch materials. The knee side contact area has been resculpted. Most models get upmarket touches like suede cloth headlining, and there are little extra details like satin chromed gear shift paddles and a Jaguar animal pattern in the central cubby and in front of the drive selector. Plus, as an option, the brand has introduced its latest cabin air ionisation technology, which features a filtration system capable of capturing ultra-fine particles. Despite all of that though, what you're most likely to notice first about the cabin of this improved model is its significant step forward in media evolution. This more sophisticated central 11.4-inch PHEV Pro screen has certainly brought the interior bang up to date, a vast improvement over the previous Touch Pro setup. And not only because the central screen is now 1.4 inches larger, basically what's on offer here is a whole fresh generation of infotainment powered by dual SIM technology with 2 LTE modems enabling the software to carry out multiple functions at the same time, such as streaming media or downloading software over the air updates that will enable the system to continually update itself. Apparently, 50% fewer inputs are required to operate this setup, and previous owners will immediately notice how much quicker everything is thanks to a built-in backup battery. Initialization for the 3D navigation system takes just seconds. 4G Wi-Fi connectivity is optional, but if you have it, up to 8 devices around the car can be connected, so your rear passengers will be grateful. Drivers will also appreciate the smarter, simpler menu structure. This right-hand menu bar gives you quick access to this monitor's major sections: nav, media, audio, and a final icons option that connects you through to a screen that collects together everything else you might want to peruse. As usual with these kinds of systems, there's a split main home screen display that prioritises the things you'll need most frequently, probably nav, phone and media, as here. Unlike the old Touch Pro setup, you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring on this monitor, with the option of wireless connectivity, but the voice control functionality here is nothing like as intuitive as that you'll find on German rivals. Still, there's a standard rear view camera and a lot of detail buried in the icons section. Tractional options like all surface information and low traction launch, an eco data segment, info on parking, and a very informative weather menu that briefs you on climate instantly, hourly, or even 5 days ahead. Just about anything else you might need to know can be found in the instrument binnacle, and you'll be particularly well served if you pay the extra for a plusher model with this interactive driver display instrument binnacle screen, or stump up more to get it fitted in place of the usual conventional analog dials. This 12.3-inch TFT monitor, controlled by this new steering wheel's rather cheap feeling hidden until lit switches, isn't quite as customisable as the standard virtual cockpit display in a rival Audi Q3, but its configurable layout can show full screen navigational mapping with turn-by-turn instructions. Or alternatively, digital dials, a speedo on the left with a central digital readout, and a rev counter on the right with a central gear selection display. These gauges can be separated by media info, infotainment details, or graphics covering your drive mode selection. And a press of the end of the left steering column stalk varies this small lower readout between trip, average speed, average or instant fuel consumption, and driving range info. You can also select both single dial and full screen mapping layouts. Enough on media, now let's get practical. Now, 2 cup holders of different sizes sit in front of this deep 8.4 litre lidded box between the seats with its USB-A and USB-C ports. This area at the bottom of the centre stack has a 12-volt socket and can also feature a wireless charging mat. And there's a big 10.1 litre glove box with a pen clip, an overhead sunglasses compartment and ticket clips in the sun visors. Thoughtfully designed slots in the spacious door pockets can take 500ml bottles. The cabin ergonomics are generally pretty good, though the starter button is rather obscured by the indicator stalk. and rearward visibility is somewhat compromised by the C-pillar styling and the raked back rear screen. That's something Jaguar's clearly aware of, hence the decision to equip all models with a rear view camera and all-round parking sensors. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, the swept-back roofline suggests that headroom back here might be at something of a premium. But in the event, rear seat headroom is actually quite good, and will be even if your E-PACE features an optional panoramic glass roof. The cabin will feel pretty cramped if you have to fit in a third occupant, but that's par for the course in this segment. And you do at least get this noticeably low centre transmission tunnel. Plus, these neat little rear C-pillar mini windows let in a bit of extra light. It's a pity though that you can't have the sliding and reclining rear bench that's available on a rival BMW X1. It all feels quite plush in this upper spec variant with these stitched door pulls, but the plastic silver trim just below isn't great to the touch. Curiously, overhead grab handles are missing, as are coat hooks of any kind. But you do get a centre armrest with twin cup holders and overhead LED lights on both sides of the car. Plus there are decently sized door pockets, nets on the seat backs and twin centre vents with a small storage area just below that. There's a 12-volt socket too, which seems a bit old-fashioned. You can swap this for a trio of USB sockets if you've got kids addicted to gaming. Now let's take a look at the boot, which you'd think for this kind of money might be accessed by a standard powered tailgate, but isn't unless you stretch beyond the lower levels of the range. Now the hatch rises to reveal one of the largest luggage compartments in the compact SUV segment, offering a 577-litre capacity that can easily swallow a folded buggy, a full set of golf clubs sideways, or 6 flight suitcases. The cargo area is very usably shaped too, and there are 4 chromed tie-down hooks in the floor that you'll be able to use to keep smaller items in place if you've ordered one of the optional luggage nets. Jaguar hasn't forgotten to add a 12-volt socket, and further practical touches include bag hooks on both cargo walls, plus on the right-hand side there's a netted area and an elasticated strap. Beyond base trim, there's this metal load space scuff plate too. Under the floor, there's a compartment that, as you can see on this PHEV variant, is taken up by the charging leads and the tyre repair kit. Now, more conventional variants offer up to 93 litres of space down here, though only if you, rather unwisely, choose not to pay extra for a space-saver spare wheel. The rear bench can't be had with a ski hatch, but you don't now need it because this revised model now incorporates the kind of more flexible 40-20-40 split that allows you to push through long items like skis in between a couple of rear-seated passengers. When everything's folded, your floor area will be almost flat, freeing up 1,234 litres of total capacity. That's a little less than you'll find with obvious rivals, but with 1,568mm of loading length on offer, you should still have plenty of luggage capacity options. From launch, pricing for this improved E-PACE started from just over £36,000, but that only gets you the manual gearbox, front-driven, unelectrified, bog-standard D165 diesel variant that hardly any customers will want. The core part of the range now starts right up at around £40,000 for the diesels, or from around £42,000 for petrol models, a sum which gives you the brand's mild hybrid tech mated to all-wheel drive and a 9-speed auto gearbox. With these electrified mainstream models, you'll be choosing between P200 or P250 variants if you want a petrol model, or between D165 and D200 options if you want a diesel. That latter D200 derivative being the only one in the main range that can be had in the brand's most basic S level of spec. Otherwise, your E-PACE will almost certainly come with some sort of R-Dynamic spec pack, though the extent of your trim options in this regard depends on engine choice. We've got the R-Dynamic pack in S-spec guys here. Different versions also feature it in R-Dynamic SE, R-Dynamic HSE and R-Dynamic Black forms. If you want something a bit more sophisticated than the core petrol or diesel variants and come instead in search of an E-PACE prioritising either performance or efficiency, then your dealer will direct you differently, either to the rather seriously quick P300 petrol model, which stands alone near the top of the range, priced from launch at around £47,500 and is fitted out with its own unique sport level of trim, or to this P300e PHEV plug-in hybrid variant, though for this you'll need a plump £46,000 to £50,000 budget. Premium pricing then right across the E-PACE range. And to get a perspective on it, you'll need to take a look at what prestigiously badged competitor models in this segment are asking. And as usual, we've done that for you. Starting with the two Land Rover models that exactly share this little Jaguar's engineering. The style-orientated Range Rover Evoque and the practically orientated 7-seat Land Rover Discovery Sport. Direct comparisons between the three models are a little difficult because spec packages vary, but if you take a typical volume engine and trim combination that all three models share, say D200R Dynamic SE, then you find that a Discovery Sport will cost you nearly £3,000 more and an Evoque will cost you nearly £4,000 more. OK, on to competitors from other brands. Now, the E-PACE may be the most affordable option of its kind in the JLR brand stable, but it's now a little pricier than most of its direct rivals from other brands. We'll pick a typical all-wheel drive auto E-PACE model, the base D200S, priced at around £40,000 as our point of comparison, which is about £1,500 more than a directly comparable Mercedes GLA 220D 4MATIC, and around £3,500 to £4,000 more than an equivalent Audi Q3 40 TDI Quattro or a BMW X1 xDrive 20D. Other segment rivals are more difficult to directly compare. The Volvo XC40 only comes with petrol power. A B4 all-wheel drive mild hybrid version of one of those costs around £4,500 less than an equivalent E-PACE P200. The Lexus UX has only a less powerful full hybrid petrol engine. Depending on trim, think of needing in the £30,000 to £35,000 range for a typical version of one of those. So again, a lot less. That's really it for direct premium badged rivals in the small SUV segment. Of course, if badge equity isn't particularly important to you, then your choices in the small crossover category widen considerably. E-PACE Money will get you very glitzily trimmed versions of near-premium contenders in this class, like the Mini Countryman, the Volkswagen Tiguan and the Cupra Formentor. All of these being cars we rate quite highly. And of course, there are plenty of other volume brand options, most of which will give you a bit more space inside. We're thinking of cars like Ford's Kuga, the Mazda CX-5, the Citroën C5 Aircross, the Hyundai Tucson, the Kia Sportage, the Vauxhall Grandland, the Skoda Karoq and Nissan Qashqai and the Peugeot 3008. You might want to consider the Honda CR-V and Toyota RAV4 as alternatives too, both of which are slightly bigger cars than this E-PACE, but which are comparably priced to it, despite the fact that instead of this Jag's mild hybrid engine tech, the CR-V and the RAV4 both come only with much more economical full hybrid units, exclusively of the petrol sort. As we mentioned earlier on, for this test we've chosen to try the E-PACE P300e plug-in hybrid model, a variant which does of course have its own group of select PHEV small SUV rivals. Again, this Jaguar, priced as we said, starting from around £46,000, comes out looking quite expensive, but to be fair, most of its rivals, which typically sell in the £39,000 to £42,000 bracket, have quite a lot less power. Here we're thinking of cars like Volvo's front-driven XC40 T5 recharge plug-in hybrid, the Mercedes GLA 250e and the BMW X1 xDrive 25e. The BMW being the only car from that group that, like this Jaguar, has all-wheel drive. Arguably a closer match, and much closer on price, is the Audi Q3 45 TFSI-E. Obviously, there are PHEV versions of volume brand, compact to mid-sized SUV rivals you could look at, but of those, only plug-in versions of the Peugeot 3008 Hybrid 4, The Hyundai Tucson and the Kia Sportage, which all require budgets of around £40,000, come with four-wheel drive and so can be seen as directly comparable. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is this Jaguar that you really want, then you're going to need to know exactly what's included in the standard spec. So let's start by briefing you on the features that all E-PACE variants share. Things like LED headlights with auto high beam assist, a rear view camera, a heated windscreen and power folding heated mirrors with approach lights all come as standard right across the range here. Plus, you get all-round parking sensors, auto headlamps and wipers, LED rear lights with animated indicators, a perimetric alarm, and 12 months of subscription to the brand's secure tracker service. Inside, even the least expensive variants come with leather upholstery, two-tone climate control, an auto-dimming rear view mirror, a 40-20-40 split rear bench, and cruise control with a speed limiter. There are plenty of standard dynamic driving aids too, so on the move, you'll benefit from the Jaguar Drive control system that, via various modes, allows you to tweak steering and throttle response to suit the way you want to drive. Cornering traction is aided by a torque vectoring setup. If, as is almost certain, your E-PACE has all-wheel drive, it'll come with the benefit of two additional clever features. All-surface progress control is a kind of low-speed cruise control that helps you maintain optimum control in low traction conditions. If you're inching across challenging terrain, you just set it and let the car take over. There's also a low friction launch feature that works when you're starting off on really low friction surfaces, activating a special throttle map that helps you pull away without wheel spin. Media connectivity across the range is taken care of by an 11.4-inch PHEV Pro infotainment screen that includes navigation, voice control, a 125-watt Jaguar sound system, a DAB tuner, Bluetooth for your phone, and USB connectivity, plus access to the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring systems. The PHEV Pro system also includes an online pack with data plan for 12 months, so you can enjoy your favourite music streaming from multiple sources, including Spotify, TuneIn and Deezer. PHEV Pro also comes with seamless connectivity, ensuring that your E-PACE will stay up to date through over-the-air software updates. So you'll get into it one day and find it able to do something it couldn't do the day before, which is rather cool. The PHEV Pro infotainment system works with a remote app that allows you to control all kinds of vehicle functions from your smartphone. You can preset navigation destinations, confirm your vehicle's location, check fuel levels and set the interior temperature, all before you open the car door. And along the way, intelligent rerouting can find you the best road to take, as well as updating parking availability, fuel price comparisons, cafe locations and traffic hotspots. Intelligent and intuitive, it seeks to learn your regular favourite routes so that the navigation system's smart voice guidance can make sure your favourite song won't be interrupted with unnecessary instructions. All this is included whatever E-PACE variant you decide upon. Base S-Spec versions also come with 12-way power adjustable heated front seats and 18-inch gloss sparkle silver alloy wheels. If you upgrade slightly to R-Dynamic S trim, then your E-PACE will get an R-Dynamic exterior styling pack with a more purposeful front bumper and a satin black diamond turned finish for the 18-inch wheels. Plus, inside, you'll be treated to sports seats, bright metal pedals, an ebony suede cloth headliner, R-Dynamic branded metal tread plates, and an R-Dynamic branded steering wheel. Plus, configurable dynamics, which allows you to tailor drive responses more precisely to your preferred style. The next step up in the lineup is R-Dynamic SE trim, recognisable by larger 19-inch style 5-spoke satin dark grey diamond-turned wheel rims and chrome side window surrounds. At this level in the range, you get premium LED headlights featuring signature daytime running light illumination, plus a powered tailgate and an upgraded Meridian sound system, plus a package of extra camera safety features. We'll brief you on all this car's safety features in a few moments. Much the same kind of kit level is provided by the alternative R Dynamic Black variants, which get a meaner look courtesy of the added dark trimming features of Jaguar's black exterior pack, and also feature privacy glass and a fixed panoramic roof. Finally, if you want a real touch of luxury with your E-PACE, there's the top R Dynamic HSE trim level, which gets 20-inch style, 5-spoke satin dark grey, diamond-turned wheel rims, keyless entry, softer Windsor leather upholstery, 16-way power adjustable seats in the front, adaptive cruise control, and a 12.3-inch interactive driver display screen replacing the conventional dials. On to options, and as you might expect from a premium brand, there's a vast selection of extras for potential buyers to choose from. Now, we think it's key to consider technology enhancement extras now offered on this improved model, like for instance the intelligent pixel LED headlights, which adjust their beam based on surrounding traffic and weather conditions. And we would also want to consider the adaptive damping system, an option which is virtually essential if you want an E-PACE fitted with one of the larger wheel sizes. This setup uses sensors that analyse body movement 100 times a second and wheel movement 500 times a second, ensuring that the suspension should always be perfectly suited to the way you want to drive. It works through the various modes of that Jaguar drive control system we mentioned earlier. Beyond that, we would start our perusal of E-PACE options by looking at the optional technology pack that's been fitted here, featuring 4 elements that you can also order separately. There's Jaguar's Clear Sight interior rear view mirror, which uses a roof-mounted camera and projects an image onto the rear view mirror so that you'll have a clear view backwards even when the boot is full or you have tall passengers. Plus, the technology pack also includes a head-up display, a wireless charging mat with phone signal booster, and a 12.3-inch interactive driver display screen to replace the instrument binnacle dials. An option available across the range that we think all owners will want to look at is the activity key. A useful thing to have is you can wear it like a watch. You can simply hold the waterproof wristband near to the J of the Jaguar lettering on the boot to unlock the tailgate. The activity key available on this updated E-PACE model is a second generation version featuring touchscreen controls and a digital watch. It's there to make easier the kind of outdoor pursuit lifestyle this car was designed for, and is a feature that also comes included as part of another pack, the convenience pack, which also includes a powered gesture controlled tailgate, load space stowage rails with a luggage retention kit, extra power sockets and keyless entry. The other key pack we think you might want to look at is the premium upgrade interior pack, which adds a touch of luxury to the cabin, giving you illuminated branded metal tread plates, premium cabin lighting and Jaguar's latest cabin air purification system with a PM 2.5 filter, which features a filtration system capable of capturing ultra-fine particles. Organising your media connectivity and in-car entertainment options will also be an important part of the E-PACE specification process. You might want to add in Wi-Fi enablement for the PHEV Pro screen. On both the S-spec E-PACE models, we'd also suggest that you pay the extra for the more powerful 380-watt Meridian surround system audio package. The standard 125-watt setup is a little feeble, and there's an even more desirable 825-watt Meridian surround sound setup available if you want it. What else? Well, this particular car features a number of nice-to-have features, like a heated steering wheel and privacy glass. Quite a few E-PACE customers like to add things like Jaguar's fixed panoramic glass roof, black or silver roof rails, keyless entry, front fog lights, and a surround view camera system too. In addition, you might want to look at seat improvements. Perhaps on a lesser model, an upgrade to the 16-way electric front seat adjustability and soft Windsor leather of the top R Dynamic HSE variant. We've got that here with a deep garnet finish. Ebony and cloud Windsor leather finishes are also available. You can add heated rear seats too, and you can also embellish the cabin with illuminated tread plates and the solar attenuating windscreen. On to aesthetics. Now, wheel rim sizes tend to be key for E-PACE buyers, so there's a wider than usual range of different alloy designs on offer in sizes from 18 up to 21 inches. This particular car's 20-inch 5 split-spoke satin grey diamond-turned rims are particularly nice. Onto paintwork. Now, bear in mind that unless you want this Jaguar finish in solid Fuji white, you'll have to pay extra for solid Caldera red or for one of the various metallic finishes. There are 8 shades on offer, including this car's Hakuba silver finish, plus 2 further premium metallic hues of Carpathian grey and silicon silver. Avoid the black shade on offer, and you can add in a black contrast roof at further extra cost. The mirror covers and the side vents can be finished in gloss black or carbon fibre, and there's an extra chromed finish for the mirrors too. A stainless steel undershield is available, and if you'd like to emphasise the SUV look, you can add side steps and bright side tubes. On to practicalities. Now, you can make better use of boot space by adding in a partition net, a floor net, or load space storage rails. Both detachable and electrically deployable tow bars are available, and all-season tyres might be useful. There are roof rails and roof crossbars that will enable the fitment of carriers for surfboards, skis, snowboards, or luggage boxes. Plus, you can have an aqua sports carrier for kayaks. Sunshades are available for the rear and side windows, and we'd also be tempted by the rear centre armrest cooler warmer box. And you can add mud flaps, a dash cam, carpet mats of the luxury or rubber kind, and click and go attachments that go on the backs of the front seats for the attachments of tablets to entertain rear passengers. Now, if you've got pets, you may want to look at Jaguar's range of bespoke pet products, which includes a pet access ramp, a portable rinse system, a spill-resistant water bowl, a foldable pet carrier, and a quilted load space liner. These various pet items can be grouped together more affordably into special packs. Enough with options, onto safety, where, as you'd expect, most of the main bases are covered. Now, we'll start with the standard features. As you'd expect, autonomous emergency braking is standard. Jaguar calls its system Emergency Brake Assist, one of those setups that scans the road ahead looking for potential accident hazards as you drive. If one is detected, you'll be warned, and if you don't respond or aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Lane departure warning also comes as standard with lane keep assist, so you'll not only be alerted if you drift out of lane, but subtle steering correction will automatically be applied to ease you back to where you ought to be. There's also a driver condition monitor that scans your reactions for drowsiness and, if necessary, will alert you to stop for a restorative coffee. Traffic sign recognition pictures speed signs as you pass and displays them on the dash. Jaguar hasn't bothered with offering a driver's knee bag, but twin front, side and curtain airbags are inevitably standard. Plus, Jaguar has engineered for this car a unique in-class pedestrian airbag which springs out from beneath the windscreen edge of the deployable bonnet in the event of an impact, protecting pedestrians or cyclists from contact with the glass. More expected passive safety features include ISOFIX rear child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, tyre pressure monitoring, and the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control. As usual, there's ABS braking with emergency brake assist to aid in panic stops, advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard flashes. What else? Well, E-PACE occupants are surrounded by a high-strength steel safety cell, and as for driving aids, well, hill start assist stops the car from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. There's also engine drag torque control to reduce the chance of the kind of wheel lock-up that might be caused by strong engine braking in slippery conditions. Cornering brake control varies braking force to each wheel to avoid unsettling the car too much if you're unwise enough to brake at speed in the middle of a corner. And roll stability control is integrated into the standard dynamic stability control system to reduce the possibility of a rollover during extreme turns at speed. Plus, if you fitted a tow bar, you'll benefit from trailer stability assist, which mitigates against trailer sway. Want to go further? Well, we referenced earlier that higher levels of trim get extra features. If you avoid the two S-Spec trim options, you'll get two additional items which can be added in at extra cost with a blind spot assist pack available at the bottom of the range. As that pack name suggests, there's a blind spot monitor which works on the move to stop you from dangerously pulling out in front of other vehicles. And there's a rear traffic monitor which warns you of approaching vehicles if you're reversing out of a space. If you want even more camera assistance tech, you'll either need to stretch right up to top R-Dynamic SHE trim or add in an optional driver assist pack. Do that, and as well as those blind spot assist pack features, if your E-PACE doesn't already have them, there's also two more elements. A rear collision monitor uses sensors on the rear corner of the vehicle to identify any potential collision risk. If necessary, flashing the hazard lights to warn an approaching driver. And in addition, you also get Jaguar's useful adaptive cruise control with Q Assist system. Here, a radar mounted in the front grille maintains a steady distance to the car in front at cruising speeds and can brake your E-PACE, then automatically start it off again if you come across a traffic tailback. The Q Assist element of this is also a feature you can set in a traffic jam so that the car can handle irritating, very low speed stop-start motoring without driver intervention. As we've been saying throughout this test, this revised E-PACE model gets the JLR Group's much trumpeted premium transverse architecture platform, which you'd think would be lighter and much more sophisticated than the old Ford-related P8 series underpinnings that featured when this model was originally launched back in 2017. That setup, after all, goes back to the days of the Land Rover Freelander. In contrast, this modern E-PACE model's chassis can facilitate all kinds of clever electrified engineering, but unfortunately it's still fashioned from clumpy old steel. The aluminium underpinnings that undergird Jaguar's larger F-PACE SUV having still been deemed too expensive for this one. The reason we're making such an issue of this is because of the contribution that all this makes to the E-PACE's unwanted status as one of the heaviest compact SUVs in its class. A typical base diesel variant's 1.85-tonne curb weight is over 180 kilos heavier than a directly comparable Audi Q3. That's like adding in the combined weight of a typical family, which is the most direct reason why this model line's fuel and efficiency readings can't match those of the competition, despite this improved model's introduction of mild hybrid engine technology that recovers braking energy, then used during low-speed driving and to boost performance when accelerating. The system enhances the usual stop-start feature by cutting the engine when rolling below 11 miles an hour, saving further fuel, though when you accelerate and the engine cuts back in, it does so with rather a jolt. Overall, the brand claims that the mild hybrid tech gives a 6% fuel economy improvement and cuts CO2 by 8%. But it's not enough to salvage a really class-competitive set of fuel and CO2 readings. Still, the MHEV technology is undeniably worth having, as is illustrated by the way that the single base-level D165 front-driven manual diesel E-PACE variant that does without it is virtually no cleaner or more frugal than a mild hybrid D165 model that has to cart around the extra weight of four-wheel drive and automatic transmission. So let's get to the WLTP figures, which see that base D165 front-driven model managing up to 45.6 mpg on the combined cycle and 162 grams per kilometre of CO2. For both the all-wheel drive automatic diesels, the D165 and the D200 MHEV variants, it's 43.4 mpg and 171 grams per kilometre. Jaguar's larger F-PACE SUV model with exactly the same engine in D165 MHEV Auto all-wheel drive form manages 45.4 mpg and 163 grams per kilometre. If you ever wanted to know just how much difference the F-PACE's light aluminium chassis might make to this car, well, you have it right there. Still, either way, you should have an operating range of over 600 miles. To give you some perspective on E-PACE diesel operating figures, we'll tell you that two comparably performing direct rivals, BMW's X1 xDrive 20D and the Mercedes GLA 220D 4MATIC, neither of which bother with mild hybrid tech, manage up to 49.6 mpg and up to 149 grams per kilometre. The mild hybrid petrol versions are some way off the diesel readings, of course. A P200 model manages up to 31.3 mpg and 203 grams per kilometre. For the P250, it's up to 31.2 mpg and 204 grams per kilometre. And for the top P300, it's up to 30.8 mpg and 207 grams per kilometre. If you're set on fuelling from the green pump, we'd recommend this P300e PHEV plug-in hybrid petrol derivative as a much better alternative. This uses a 3-cylinder, 1.5 litre PHEV petrol-electric plug-in power plant paired with an 8-speed auto gearbox. This combination's boosted with a 109 PS electric motor powered by a 15 kilowatt-hour battery pack that, when charged, can offer up to 34 miles of driving range, all of which facilitates 143.1 mpg fuel figure and a 44 gram per kilometre CO2 reading. Pie in the sky? Well, perhaps, but you'll do as well, perhaps even better than you would in the much less powerful diesel variants, providing you make proactive use of the dedicated P300e model drive settings, EV, hybrid and save. P300e charging via a fast charger, a 32 kilowatt DC plug or greater, takes 30 minutes for an 80% fill. With the kind of 7 kilowatt charger you'd install in your garage, it's 1 hour 24 minutes. You'll want to be taxation friendly with your choice of E-PACE variant. We'd suggest a low-spec D165 MHEV auto diesel to be a good choice in this regard. Avoid the options list and you should keep the list price under £40,000 and therefore avoid the government's £320 annual VED surcharge in years 2 to 6 of ownership for cars costing over this figure. Below £40,000, the CO2-weighted first-year road tax payment will be £205, normally rolled into the on-the-road price, following by the standard £134 a year. In terms of benefit-in-kind taxation payments, all MHEV E-PACE models fall into the maximum 37% band. For the non-electrified manual base D165 variant, it's 36%, and for this P300e PHEV, it's 11%. All of the fuel and CO2 figures we quoted earlier assume that you've chosen the most frugal of the 4 Jaguar drive control driving modes, Eco, for your trip, a setting that, as the name suggests, adjusts all of the car's systems for maximum efficiency. Of course, the driver will need to play his or her part in pursuit of cleanliness and frugality, keeping an eye on the eco data part of the infotainment screen. Here you get various screen options. There's one that shows you the energy impact of various electrical items, the air conditioning, the heated rear window, the heated windscreen, the heated steering wheel, the headlights and the heated seats, and another with so-called eco tips that are supposed to improve your frugality, though some of these, to be frank, are a bit blindingly obvious. Things like aim for smooth acceleration and maintain a constant speed. Most useful is the driving style display that marks your driving efficiency from 1 to 5 in 3 areas: economy, speed and braking, giving you a driving score. There's also a history section which graphically shows your success or otherwise at frugality over your most recent journeys, rather cringingly awarding you a little trophy for the most frugal one. It'll also help that the routing software in the PHEV Pro navigation system can propose an economical route option to minimise fuel consumption. As for engine technology, well, the diesel engines, like the units you'll find in every rival, use AdBlue, a urea-based liquid that's squirted into the hot exhaust to neutralise many of the harmful gases that would otherwise be blown into the surrounding atmosphere. The AdBlue tank will need to be filled up regularly, though it can last up to 9,000 miles, and your Jaguar dealer will charge around £30 to fill it up. If you've taken out one of the brand's service plans though, these top-ups are included for free. A lot of E-PACE buyers will fund their car through a lease deal, and Jaguar offers its own finance for this. Most of these packages include the cost of insurance, but if you buy the car with your own money or decide to arrange cover yourself, you'll want to know which group your car will sit in. Well, the base D165 manual front-driven diesel model is rated at Group 29E. It's 32E for the D165 MHEV auto all-wheel drive version and 34E to 38E for the D200 MHEV variant. Switching to the petrol models, the P200 is rated at 33 to 36E, the P250 at 37 to 40E, and the P300 Sport at 42E. This P300E plug-in model ranges from 40 to 42E, and overall that's a chunk above the ratings that apply to directly comparable rivals. What else? Well, you get the usual unremarkable 3-year warranty, though to be fair, it does cover you for up to 100,000 miles, and service intervals are set at 21,000 miles or every 24 months, whichever comes first, though it would be sensible to consider one of Jaguar's service plans that cover you for virtually everything in advance. There's a standard mileage service plan that covers you for 5 years or 50,000 miles, or a high mileage service plan that covers you for 5 years or 75,000 miles. Both packages include engine oil and filters, checking and topping up brake fluid, and a 24-month guarantee on any replacement parts. Should anything go wrong, Europe-wide breakdown assistance is part of the deal for 3 years. As for depreciation, well, the news is almost universally positive here. A typical D200 variant will still be worth between 56 and 60% of its original purchase price after 3 years and 36,000 miles, which is a very class competitive result indeed. With the petrol versions though, the figure would be more like 45%. Stick with the black pump, and despite its so-so efficiency showing, thanks to this residual showing, an F-PACE should still be very cost effective to lease for company or private drivers, whether you choose Jaguar's own scheme or one of the many others on offer. The E-PACE has been one of the most significant cars that Jaguar has ever made. The first to be manufactured outside the UK, the first to attack the volume part of the SUV market, and the car tasked with pushing the brand's global annual sales beyond the 250,000 mark for the first time. It's attracted a whole new generation of customers to the company's showrooms, and we can see why, combining as it does dynamic Jaguar body language with the fashionable practicality of a compact SUV. A significant car, though, isn't necessarily a great one. And to be frank, this wasn't a great car in its original form. The relatively old steel chassis that back in 2017 Jaguar used in order to get this car into the showrooms quickly and fill a gap in its marketing plan affected both agility and efficiency in equal measure, and was responsible for a level of curb weight that affected both running costs and drive dynamics. It would be wrong to say that the changes made here, primarily based around extra electrified engine tech, have completely transformed this car in both these areas. But if you're browsing in this segment, you need to know that a significant step forward has been made. Enough to put this car back into class contention? Absolutely. We still wish it was a little more affordable, especially in this otherwise quite appealing plug-in form, and that across the range the handling was a bit more engaging. It's here you realise that this car's rather weighty basic genes are more Land Rover than Jaguar. By and large though, small SUVs aren't bought for driving thrills. And anyway, though this one may still be some way from being the segment sports car that originally Jaguar promised us, it remains more accomplished on twisting tarmac territory than many of its rivals. And it's a bit different in style and character too. We may bemoan the fact that the E-PACE doesn't share its bigger stablemate's light aluminium underpinnings, but we're pleased that in other respects it's been differentiated as a separate model in its own right with its own distinct character. We can understand why you might feel more of a sense of engagement with its design, both inside and out, than you might with an obvious rival, especially now that the cabin's been brought up to date. Plus, this car's a quiet, comfortable cruiser with a big boot and lots of scope for personalisation if funds permit. The brand says that this car energises its segment, and we wouldn't disagree. Yes, if you judge it as a Jaguar, there are questions to ask here. If, though, you analyse this model's merit as a compact SUV, you'll find there's a lot to like.